Hi, everybody. My name is Hillel Cooperman. I'm a Senior Vice President of User Experience and Design here at Oracle, and I'm thrilled to be able to show you all the exciting work we're doing at Oracle on helping you design great user experiences that your organization is going to love. So let's dive in. All of us are technologists and responsible for bringing the magic of technology to help people do their jobs in organizations. And here at Oracle, we have this notion of trying to help our users fall in love with their tools and with whoever's providing those tools to help them do their jobs, one interaction at a time. And this notion of falling in love with tools, it may seem a little, I don't know, strange. Like, are you supposed to love the tools you use? But think about that chef that has that favorite set of knives. Or think about a carpenter who has these beautiful tools that they use to create gorgeous furniture. Like, in fact, all of us at work, we prefer to use tools that are really high quality. And the way to make those tools high quality is to make sure that every single interaction you have with those tools is polished, seamless, is intuitive, and makes the person using those tools feel heard, seen, and understood. So here at Oracle, we started with the premise that actually enterprise software is just software and enterprise users are human beings. And this may seem obvious, but in fact, I would argue that for a lot of enterprise software today, and actually for the industry, people kind of say, oh, well, enterprise software is different. And the people who use it are different. They want a different thing. Enterprise experiences are very complex. And actually, I'm not sure I exactly agree with that sentiment. And we see it a little differently. Human beings are not only at work or only at home. Their lives are intertwined. They're working from home, obviously, and they're doing home things during work hours sometimes because life is like that. And there's no reason why they shouldn't get a consumer grade experience with the tools that they use to get their job done. And when we looked around, we thought to ourselves, well, who is taking the lead here in creating that consumer grade user experience for enterprise applications? And as far as we can tell, no one has. And we think that's our mission, is to really take the lead and set a new bar for when it comes to creating great enterprise experiences. So our name for that mission, for that system, for that platform is Redwood. Redwood is a reference to our original headquarter location in Redwood Shores, California. It's a nod to the redwood trees, one of the wonders of the world, these absolutely beautiful, amazing products of nature, and how they aspire to new heights and reach up to the cloud, of course. Redwood is a design system, and it is a user experience, and it is a philosophy that is something you create by using the Oracle Applications Platform. So let's take a look and see for a second what kind of experiences you can create with the Redwood design system and the Oracle Applications Platform. All right. So hopefully that seemed pretty exciting and pretty big leap from the typical enterprise applications that you've seen historically. So the question is, okay, you want to create your own Redwood applications. You want to extend our Redwood applications and customize them. How do you do that? Where do you start? Now, I want to remind you, this session here is about how you design those applications. And we have another session that we'll talk about at the end of this one about how to build them. but these things go hand in hand. Design is iterative, and you don't start building a building without having a set of blueprints, right? And same is true with software. First, you design the experience that you want to create, and then you develop that experience, and then you learn from your users. And it's a loop. You just keep going around and around and around. Every time you design something, you've got to put it in code and then put it in front of your users to see what's working and what's not working and how you can make tweaks and optimizations and improvements until you have that experience that users are falling in love with one interaction at a time. So let's dive into what that means. There's several things we do in the design process here for a Redwood application on the Oracle Applications platform, and I'm going to take you through them one at a time. The first is, and this may sound obvious, but it's about intentionality. You want to have a clarity of purpose around what the user is trying to achieve. So this is not just clarity of your purpose in creating this application, but it's clarity of purpose in terms of what the user is trying to do. Now, we do this by creating user goal statements. What's a user goal statement? It's a solution agnostic statement that defines what your user or users are trying to accomplish. So here's an example of a typical user goal. Expense submitters want to submit their expenses in a few clicks on their phones. Except, I tricked you, apologies. That is a terrible, terrible user goal. Really actually not what we're trying to accomplish. In fact, nobody actually wants to submit expenses. Nobody cares about clicking on things. What people actually want to do is, the actual user goal is something along the lines of, I spent money for work and I'd like to get it back. Like, that's it. And here's a little more nuanced version of it. So there's a user, there's their goal, there's their motivation. In this case, expense submitters need to get reimbursed for the money they spent on work expenses and make sure they followed company spending policies, and they want their manager to see them as a responsible spender. So that's how we fashion these things. You can see there's no mention of the technology here. There's no mention of how fast or efficient. There's no adjectives here about the experience. It is literally just about what the user is trying to achieve. And believe it or not, these statements are harder to write than you'd imagine. And we recommend you start here because it gives clarity of purpose to everybody on the team who's building this application and designing it. Okay. Second, once you understand what your users are trying to do, next it's time to understand the shape of the data they're going to interact with while they're trying to achieve those goals. What's an example of that? Well, how often are they submitting expenses? What are the amounts they're submitting? Let me give you a bunch of examples here. What is the length of the descriptions in terms of the number of characters that users are using to describe their expenses? Well, if it's 20 characters, that's different than 200 characters. And depending on what the length is, that's going to make a very different design of the experience. So getting this data is super important. Okay, third, once you understand what they're trying to achieve, once you understand the shape of the data that they're going to interact with in trying to achieve those goals, it's time to focus on scenarios. And scenarios are basically real-world examples of how you go through a flow to actually, in the case before, submit an expense, or in this case, manufacture things. So this is roles. We have a production supervisor. They have these two user goals. They're identifying material exceptions. They're identifying which machines are down for maintenance. And we pull all that together into this flow, this scenario. And you can do it here as a flow chart, or you can do it as a prose description of what the user is trying to accomplish. But the basic idea is trying to understand, well, when they do this goal, what is the actual course of events that they're going to go through to make that happen? Once you do that, it's time to start sketching. And really think of these as like storyboards in a movie, right? You're going to go through and start to get an idea of like, okay, well, the first decision they need to make is this. So we're going to create a screen that lets them make that decision. And the next decision they need to make is another decision. And we'll create a screen for that. That actually is what leads you to the first resource we have available for you. And it's called the Redwood Pattern Book. You know, most user interfaces, people think that they have to design them with the atomic components. Oh, I'll get a menu and put it here. I'll get a scroll bar over here. I'll get a button over here, a dialog box over here. We've actually decided that in Redwood, we want to make it even easier for you to create applications. Instead of working at the atomic level, we want to level it up to the molecular level. In fact, we have this book of common patterns that we see in enterprise user experiences. For example, a list with search. For example, a guided process. For example, an object with lots of metadata about that object in multiple categories, or a grid, or a page that welcomes you to a process, or a dashboard, or a simple create and edit, or a Gantt page, and on and on and on. Our idea is that when you go do that flow, remember we talked before about this storyboards, that you can now use the Redwood pattern book to identify which pattern you should use for each screen. So instead of having to assemble every screen from scratch, we've pre-assembled screens for you with Redwood patterns. And we think that's going to save you an enormous amount of time and actually give you an enormous amount of coherence, consistency, and quality in your experience. And the Redwood pattern book is something I'm going to show you how to get to in a little bit. Another resource we're giving you is the Redwood Design System Toolkit. The toolkit is actually every single pattern that's available to you that you can use in the design tool. The design tool that we've chosen is Figma. And over time, we're also going to give people who are not adept with Figma a simplified version of the toolkit to be able to use in PowerPoint. But this is going to be available to you as well, and I'll show you how to get that later in the talk. This is a full pattern that you would be able to drag and drop from Figma and be able to identify in the Redwood toolkit and see for you right here. This is an example of the Gantt pattern. All right, number 4. Now I want to get into a little bit of our philosophical approach, because so far we've identified our goals, right? We've identified our shape of our data, and we've identified our scenarios, and then we've applied the pattern book to pick patterns for each step in the flow. But I want you to understand that, we have a philosophy behind this, and we believe in minimalism and interaction design. And in general, I like to think about that as, if you have something on a screen that does something, you don't need 2 or 3 or 4 things on the same screen that do the same thing. You're trying to just limit what you do here. So let's take this example that's not software of these people that live on 2 sides of a river, and they like to be able to cross the river and see each other. Well, we built a bridge here for them. Well, sometimes I feel like in modern enterprise software, we feel like, well, what about the people who live in the upper right-hand corner and they want to get all the way to the lower left, or they want to get over to the upper left, rather? Shouldn't we maybe make it easier for them? And so we start adding all sorts of facilities in the software to make things easier. Well, in my opinion, that's a bit of a slippery slope for a couple of reasons. Yes, it would make it more convenient, but there are costs to having 3 more bridges, not just the time to build and develop them and maintain them, but also it's a bit of a slippery slope, because eventually, I believe, in many enterprise software applications, you get to this scenario and things start looking like this. And once you build those bridges, they're very difficult to take away. Once you add features in software, it's very difficult to take away. So we really firmly believe start with less. You can always add more facilities. You can always add more affordances. You can always add more features, because you don't want it to get like this. And once it's like this, you're in trouble. Yeah, like I said, once you add it, it's very hard to take it away. Now, when it comes to our visual design, however, and this I think is a common, I don't want to say mistake, but I just think it's a different philosophy. I think people think that you have to be minimalist in your visual design, and making things look so spare that it's almost as if they're only wireframes is something that enterprise users want. I don't agree. In fact, even these slides, I think, are a good example of that. When it comes to visual design, we believe in being expressive. We believe in creating an environment where people feel comfortable, where people feel like they understand the gist of what's happening. We do that with our own custom typography, Oracle Sans, with this really distinctive color palette, with thousands of icons, with textures, with illustrations, etc. And I will tell you, and we also do it with just the beauty of all of these atomic components and how they come together. I think there's this common misconception in software design that there is some sort of tension between making something usable and making something beautiful. And frankly, we just don't agree here at Oracle. What we believe is that if something is not usable, then it is not beautiful. And if something is not beautiful, then it is also not usable. That these things go hand in hand. And in fact, here's some examples. This is a report on cache positions in Oracle software. We think it is minimalist in interaction. We think it is beautiful and expressive and informative. Yeah, this is a report in Oracle's enterprise software. Here's another report that's designed as a slideshow. Again, this is all important information that's conveyed to the user in a beautiful and expressive way with minimal interaction. By the way, here at Oracle, our design system is so expressive that we haven't just limited to applying it to our software, but we've been lucky enough to be able to apply it to actually our physical space as well. So the very tools you use and the environment in which you're using those tools are coherent. Now, number 6. We think it's important, and you've got to choose your moments wisely to create signature moments in the experience. And we've shown you a few of those in those reports we just had. A signature moment is a place where you're in the flow, using the software, and something important is happening. And that important thing deserves a little bit of a different expression. So let me give you an example of what that might look like, right? We use all these components and we assemble them all together. Look at this Gantt chart and the way you zoom in and out, or the way we reveal little insights, or the way you just scroll on this list, or the way we show this network visualization, or the way we simulate experience. There's a preview where you can drag and drop. All of these things are little signature moments. The way we zoom in on that flow chart, they're little signature moments that give users a feeling like they're in a polished, crafted experience. Okay. Importantly, and this is critical. Remember, we talked about design, development, and then getting feedback from users. Well, after you've designed that experience, and again, remember, we're going to go talk about building it in another session. But once you build it, it's important to get it in front of users in real world scenarios. Yes, you can do measurement before in the designs. You can do paper prototypes. You can do usability tests. You can do, full fidelity prototypes. But the truth is, in our experience, and I'm not down on testing before you develop, but in our experience, the single best way to find out the reality of what users' experience is to get a minimum version of the product out there. It won't be perfect, but it will have the basics of achieving their user goal, and then get a sense for how they're using it in the real world with their real data, in their real job, at their, in their real work environment. And there's really 2 questions that we have, fundamentally 2 questions. 1, do our users engage with technology to accomplish their user goals? In other words, we knew what our intention was about creating the software. Are they using the software to achieve their goal? If not, you've got a great indication right there that you've missed the mark. And then if you get to the point where they actually are using it, question 2 is, how do they feel once they've used it? I know you may have thought that I was going to give you this long list of metrics. How long did it take them to complete a task? What were their navigation paths? What was their user journey? What was their success rate? Yes, those are important. But at the end of the day, if I had to boil it down to the only 2 things that really matter is, do they use it and how do they feel once they did it? Because after that, what else matters? If they use it and they're psyched about it, they're recommending to others, they're going to, when they switch jobs, they're like, oh, do you use that same application I used to use that I loved? Because if not, I'm not coming to work for you. That's when you know you're doing it right. Now, our goal is to give you all of the resources that you need and the support so that you can start designing and building your own applications, your own Redwood applications. Right? These are just examples of all the applications that we've designed and built here at Oracle. And the beauty is that Redwood is not just a design system. Redwood is a platform. The Oracle Applications Platform is not just the platform that we use to build our applications here at Oracle. That platform is the very same platform that we give to you. And I'll tell you, this is the first time, I believe, that there is a company that aspires to not only create an application platform that's specifically designed to create state-of-the-art enterprise user experiences, but that the very same application they use is the one you can use to extend our applications and the one you can use to build your own. So see for yourself. There's another session called Building Redwood Application Experiences. That's LRN 3763. I urge you to search for it. I'm sure there'll be a link somewhere nearby for you to click on it and go watch that. And that'll talk about all the tools you can use as a developer once you've designed the application to go build it. And believe me, we put a lot of effort into making sure it's as easy to build as it is to design. Second, go to redwood.oracle.com. We affectionately call that site the Rock. When you go there, you're going to get an enormous number of resources and support to go design and build your Redwood applications. Third, as I mentioned, the Redwood Toolkit. Right now, it's available to you if you're a Figma user on Figma Communities. Just search for Redwood and you'll find it there. And like I said, also soon we're going to have a PowerPoint toolkit, also a simplified PowerPoint toolkit for folks who are not necessarily designers, but want to get into the basics of laying out their screens. And then finally, we would love to hear from you. We'd love to understand where we can do better. Redwood is not a moment in time. It is not a destination. It is a journey. And the only way we can make sure that it is constantly improving, remember what I said at the beginning of the talk, design is an iterative process. And not just the design of your applications, but the design of the toolkit and the platform that enables you to build those applications is an iterative design journey. So come join the Redwood community on Cloud Customer Connect. That's Oracle's community site. And here's the URL for that. Thank you very much. We really appreciate you being here today. And we're really looking forward to working with you and seeing the amazing Redwood applications that you build yourselves.